Hey, welcome to the game Asylum. What are we talking about today? Well, let me tell you about Murdered Sole Suspect. Good lord, that's a dumb name. Developed by Airtight Games and published by Square Enix, Murdered was released in June 2014 on the PC, 360 and PS Triple, but let's not forget it was also a next-gen title on the Xbone and PS4, and the impetus of this entire game was dreamt up by Square's creative director Yuzosuke Shikawa in an attempt to capture a Western audience, as Japanese games around that time, in the late thousands and early 2010s, weren't doing so hot. Regardless, Shiokawa pitched this idea to Airtight after being inspired by a question pinging around his skull after watching the seminal 80s action flick Die Hard. And that question in question is... what if John McClane died? Would he still continue to save the innocent people of Nakatomi Plaza? Would he try to save his wife from Alan Rickman from beyond the grave? A wondrous mind palace indeed. And whatever he's smoking, I'll take 10 please. Of course, Airtight wasn't going to be as literal as its purse strings. So over the next few years, they toyed with the idea of meshing both Eastern and Western philosophies about ghosts into a game where you play as a ghostly detective, with, apparently, over a year and a half of back and forth between the two parties, trying to get the ghost elements just right, because one culture loves the spooky girls with long black hair that tickles your existentialism, and the other is of course a springboard for grifters, screeching to camera like a gaggle of startled geese. We start this tale with a lengthy intro video, truncated the life of our lead through his countless tattoos.
Time to make it official.
Dad, it hurts!
My car? You paid a price.
William O'Connor, you're under arrest for the assault and battery of Vincent Coulter.
Guilty on 2 counts of grand theft auto.
On the indictment of burglary.
Grand larceny and assault with a deadly weapon.
And you can tell that his local Inca never went to bed on an empty stomach. Anyway, we play as Ronan, edgy fedora-wearing detective on the edge, keeping the scum off the modern streets of Salem, Massachusetts, until this fateful evening where he took on the laws of physics and lost.
You have the right to remain silent. Any cop you throw out of a window will hunt you down and kick your ass.
I love him already. He decides that the bloke who tossed him out of the 4th floor window isn't going to get away with it. But sadly for Ronan, he discovers that his meat sack is still lying on the floor, and in a rush to get back to his body, he finds the creep who unceremoniously dumped him on the tarmac is now pointing his own gun at him, and in a blink of an eye, our avatar gets blown away by this masked assailant. And now stuck in a ghostly purgatory, Ronan must find the man who killed him and find a way to meet up with his deceased love. You could say that this intro is a quick mover. And now Ronan is one of the boo boys. We are shown the ropes by this scrote that looks like Wednesday Addams, called Abigail, who gives our boy the rundown of how this world works in the only way gaming from the early 2010s allowed, by selecting questions. And sure, this is a shallow tell me more about this, tell me more about that style of convo. I was taken by how well it's written, with its dry wit being elevated by Ronan's voice actor, Jason Brooks. And after checking his IMDb, he was in basically everything and Baywatch. But instead of the hunky Chad Dubrow dipshit you would think he would sound like, his performance here feels like a weary detective that's lived 100 lives and smokes the same amount a day. Because let's be real here, if it wasn't for those 9s in his chest, the endless Camel Blues would have done him in sooner rather than later. After being canonized, we catch up with the crime scene and learn that this guy, Officer Baxter, is a prick.
Backup? Who needs backup? You shouldn't have tried to be one of us.
And this murder is the work of the Bell Killer, a naughty boy who has been on quite the tear through the streets of Salem as of late. And then we are introduced to Ronan's brother-in-law, Rex, and we are let off the leash to do our detective shit, gathering all the clues as to what happened to himself, which is kind of obvious. But this is where we're introduced to Murdered's main loop, of finding tidbits and selecting the right stream of events to work out what is going on. While it's not a hardcore sim in this aspect, it does make you feel like Columbo with prison tattoos, using Ronan's ghostly powers of possessing people to read their internal thoughts and influencing them to tell the truth. Also, it has this fly-on-the-wall nature to the conversations that keeps the tone breezy, and it kind of reminded me of Supernatural or early Buffy, without the vomit-inducing wordplay of the latter. And sure, the tone goes darker the further we go in. This whimsy is a much welcome addition when the story takes that turn. But this is where we move into another sizable part of the game, the exploration. And in a way, I can see the design of survival horror games bleed into Murdered, pun intended. Not for shooting the faces of unspeakable terror. Okay, it does have a combat mechanic, but come on, we're having fun, so let's not spoil it. No, for its anal bead level design, where we travel across Salem in a sizable map, but we end up in sizable places where we can skulk through and investigate, such as the building old Ronan got thrown out of a second ago, and we can quickly see that this place is not only inhabited by the living, but also other members of the afterlife posse. And this is where we're introduced to the side cases, like this girl, who knows that she's been slain but doesn't know where her body is, and can't pass on until she finds her corpse. And then you quickly find out that her next door neighbours were being kept awake by her all-night drug-filled parties, so they bumped her off and dumped her carcass in a nearby quarry, which I will admit was an eye-opener for me, because yes, they're cranky, but they don't look like the type.
Finally, some peace and quiet. All her parties. How can anyone sleep through music blasting like that? I think she was on drugs. Walter was so tired he could barely stay awake for the 5 miles it took to drive to Smithwick Quarry. I couldn't believe he was able to find a pair of lock cutters that late at night. At least the music has stopped. Now we can finally sleep.
But with Ronan's skills, he can eke out a confession while helping the girl to move on. And I will admit, this felt good to help. Which is a nice twist because most NPC side quests in pretty much every game you can think of, you instantly forget about them as soon as you've completed the task. Hell, just hanging out in this apartment block is fun, until you encounter the demons. And as this is a game published by Square, you can just imagine that some suit wearing a ridiculous spiky wig looked at this chill loop and screamed, "Combat mechanics! Combat mechanics! Yeah!" So as a way to sate these ghouls, the devs put what I will charitably call a stealth system into the game, where we quote, sneak behind these polter twats, and yeah, this is pretty tacked on. After that section, Ronan finally makes it to the top floor, and begins to scope out this apartment where he got his ass handed to him. And what shakes out is that this abode belongs to a girl, and the bell killer was here to attack her. But luckily, our lad was on his tail, and during getting his shit pushed in, this girl climbs out of the window and escapes. So after reliving this embarrassing beatdown, Ronan discovers that this girl called Joy has scalped to the local church. But let's take a step back and drink in the visuals. For disclosure, I'm playing this on the PC, and considering Murdered is running on the Unreal Engine 3, and if you are a PC player, you know this engine is a notorious pain in the ass, but for its sins, Airtight fucking nailed the art style. And I love how the modern world is contrasted by the history of Salem leaking through the ghost world, such as this boat just chilling in the middle of an alleyway, or a derailed ghost train behind the petrol station, and the countless amount of burning buildings harking back to the real Great Salem fires in 1914, which gives these streets a lived-in feel. Sure, it's stylized and moody, but the nods towards actual events help me buy into this world, and the obsession to explore every inch of this town started right here, with this woman crying on the beach.
Listen, I don't know if there's anything I can do, but it looks like you could use some help.
I don't know how I got here, or even where here is. I can't remember what happened to me. Why am I like this?
I'm sorry to tell you, kid. But if you're here, it means you're dead.
I knew it.
Look, I'm in a similar situation. Now, I used to be a detective. Let me take a look around and See if I can find anything that will help you make sense of all this.
I don't even know where you'd start.
Is there anything you remember? It doesn't matter how small. Sometimes the tiniest detail is all it takes.
I remember lots of people. And this rowboat. Everyone was scared. And I keep seeing the name Mono Handset.
As it turns out, the Mono Handset is real and was a ship that was used in the American Civil War, which later in 1904 crashed into Misery Island off the coast of Salem, which, come on, this island was made for spooky stories. Anyway, this woman died trying to save people on that ship when her rowboat capsized. And this blew my mind right here. This is how you do world building.
Did you find anything?
That name you remember, the Mono Handset? Turns out it was a steamer ship that sank right outside of Salem Harbor. If it weren't for you, a lot of people would have died. You're a hero.
And so far, murder's really hitting all the things I love in games. And I want to go into the main story, but as this is a murder mystery and the whole piece lives and dies on this aspect, it's time for a spoiler warning. Are the cherries gone? Thank fuck for that. Okay, we catch up with Ronan, who's talking to a shoe pervert, sitting too close to this woman.
I can't smell good. Ugh.
It smells perfect. It smells like her.
So you just decided to help yourself to her closet, then?
No. The ones in her closet were too new. Besides, she knew someone had been in there. I waited until she threw them out. You know, I was always good at waiting and watching. Sometimes she would look around like she could feel me watching.
And if she caught you, then what? Your whole world would come crashing down.
Why? It never has in the past. I deal with her the way I dealt with the others. And then I move on to the next one.
I mean, come on mate, you're in a house of God right now. Think about your ghost pecker later. Anyway, the people here are sheltering from the Bell Killer, as the death of a detective has caused shockwaves of terror within the townsfolk. And we also see a flashback of Ronan getting hitched. In fact, we get a ton of these, and other notes dotted around written by his better half. It's quite sweet and a great way to learn about our lead without the already mentioned exposition dumps. But we can't be distracted from our main mission, we have to find Joy. And while no clipping through this place, we see the Colonel, who apparently fell on hard times after the incident at Shadow Moses.
Evidence okay?
Oh, yes sir, just regular maintenance. These things are big enough for small animals to go hiking in, so we just have to make sure none of the little critters get trapped in there.
Well, what happens then?
You probably don't want to hear about it in the food preparation area.
And then we find a kitty that we bumped into earlier, and fucking yes. This is the best game ever. And we use our new feline abilities to climb through the attic window, where we see Joy, who is desperately going through this place trying to find a key. After some back and forth, Ronan manages to convince her to help him, as finding his killer will also help find her missing mother, who is another supposed target, as she is a medium who is working with the Rosas to try and crack this case. And then Joy discovers a note from her mother, telling her to find a book that could help in this investigation, and this book is at the police station. But like most teenagers, this brat ditches Ronan to sneak into the police station by herself. And if the Colonel is now moonlighting as a pest control guy, Joy's chances of solid snaking through the cop shop is slim to none. And after shaking down a nearby witness...
So, where'd she go, huh?
We make our way towards Salem PD. On our travels, we find another note from Ronan's dead wife about Baxter, who loves to give her man a hard time. And we bump into this chud who apparently died while drunk driving. And I would elaborate, but this one felt kind of flat to me. And then we make it to the police station, and of course, Rex, who's now in charge of this case, gets that speech from his boss.
This boils down to sloppy leadership, Lieutenant. Whoever made the call for Ronan to go in alone, it's on you. We lose one of our own tonight and you have no suspects, And no leads?
Look, Captain, he wore gloves and apparently didn't touch anything in the apartment other than the knob on the front door. He didn't leave prints, fibers, or anything else traceable. And if you think I don't want this guy to pay more than you, you are sadly mistaken.
Watch your tone, Rex. Everyone knows he was your brother-in-law, so you don't need to remind us.
You're on thin ice, Rex! And of course, our reluctant sidekick got caught. So Ronan busts her out, and the duo make their way into Baxter's office, who was the detective previously working on the Bell Killer case before he was demoted, which in turn caused friction between him and Ronan. But then he discovers that Baxter had a copy of his old rap sheet, but instead of using it to blackmail him, he just left it on the floor. But we can't dwell on this, as Joy finds her mother's book, which alludes to another Bell Killer victim that died at the local cemetery, and you have to give him praise for efficiency. Jump cut to the graveyard, where Ronan does his thing, and quickly finds the corpse of a girl who washed downstream, who is wearing the same outfit as the girl that's been stalking him since he arrived. Once we get past the spooky, scary annoyances, we bump into a ghost tour, and of course we have a douchebag TV crew filming some Zach Baggins style shit, but the ghost waving in front of the camera did make me laugh. We also meet a doctor that isn't some evil fucker that cuts you up for his twisted experiments. Or is he? Yeah, it's kind of obvious. But a hard-nosed detective ain't got time for that, as he finally catches up with that girl from earlier, who was indeed murdered by El Belendo in the most fucked up way imaginable. And during this act, the Bell Killer demands to know the reason behind a quote contract, which later in the book of plot points leads to another attempted murder, who the victim of this failed attempt is currently being held at a local mental hospital. And now we are making our way to an actual game asylum. I do want to say that those early parts where we were doing those fantastic side quests seem to disappear at this point in the game. And yeah, I'm still enjoying strolling through these streets. You get this really sinking feeling there's a distinct lack of anything to do here. Like yeah, this traversal is to give off the illusion of a singular, continuous world, but those little fables that added so much texture are no longer here. But stick a pin in that, because here we are, the Lux Eternia Mental Hospital. After dodging the screws, we make it into Iris's room, and straight away things go sideways, as it turns out that Iris had a twin sister called Rose, who were both kidnapped by our killer in an attempt to burn them at the stake. But during this flurry, Iris's twin manages to free her, but in doing so pays the ultimate price for a selfless act. And here is where we learn that our murderer extraordinaire is targeting young girls, and Iris's mental break was due to Rose possessing her. But instead of keeping Iris in this building full of guards and other security shit, Ronan decides to bust her out. And yeah, why would you do this? Especially when he slammed you against the furniture like an IKEA-based wrestling deathmatch. Pedantic pissing aside, we find out that this contract is a binding agreement between mortals and demons, which leads to Ronan putting the pieces together that these killings are similar to how supposed witches were executed back in the late 1600s, in another real-life slice of history Salem would love to forget. And with this new information, Ronan makes a beeline to the museum, which coincidentally, is hosting an exhibit of the witch trials. And yeah, here it is, the chair and the stake were two methods of execution. And this sparked another IRL rabbit hole for me, as this movement, this lynching if you will, of innocent girls, some barely old enough to speak, was done to scare people from questioning the authority of the Puritan nutcases, who were trying to keep order under the guise of religious dogma. And one of the ways of control was to spread propaganda about a sect of people influenced by demons. And the first reported bewitchments was two girls, the daughter and the niece of the Puritan minister of Salem, Samuel Parris. And these two accused other women and girls of using their dark powers on them, with most of these accused women being rivals of Parris, or people of undesirable nature, which as you can see is very convenient. Okay, I'm compressing a shit ton of stuff here in a vain attempt to give you context, but this real life event is the main jumping off point for this story, as this is the moment where the game tells us that Abigail, you know, the girl from the beginning of the game, was also hanged during this time. And fun fact, that Puritan nutcase I just mentioned, his niece, one of the two girls accusing all these other women, was also called Abigail. And if this wasn't blindly obvious, Ronan finally discovers that the bell killer is offing these young girls as if they are witches, but then, bafflingly unsure as to why, he goes deeper into the museum and discovers that Puritan psychics were often persecuted for witchcraft. And we also find out that his old rival Baxter was also previously skulking around, like a right guilty spot. So our intrepid detective decides to pay him a visit at his gaff to try and dig up some more juicy morsels. Sadly, this tangent is interrupted by the thin blue line, speeding towards the church, where Joy took Iris earlier for safekeeping. And yes, Ronan is a fucking idiot. After rushing to see what's going on, he discovers that Joy still sucks at stealth, and of course, Iris has been murdered.
No, please stop. Please leave me alone.
God, Jesus Christ. Talk about being stoned.
No, please. What do you want? Stop, please stop, please stop, please stop.
Damn it. If she'd stayed at the hospital, she'd still be alive.
Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. But our antagonist has been working overtime. Not only did he kill one girl, he took out an entire wedding party just to get to her. But wait, there's more. In an earlier conversation between Rex and this guy, the finger of blame is being pointed towards Baxter, who has now mysteriously disappeared. And after interrogating a cat, yes, I just said that out loud, we discover that our killer dropped a key in his fracas to a place called the Judgment House, a prominent building during the witch trials, which is, as you can guess, a perfect hiding spot for a deranged dickass. So of course we walk into this creepy murder house. And yup, if I was going to be a murderer, this would be my main base. Or a perfect setting for a Prodigy video. We also find out that this version of the killer isn't the original, as these slayings have been going on for generations. So not only do we have a current Bell killer, but there is more, or copycats? Fuck. This investigation is going off the rails. This is beyond Salem PD. Shit, this is beyond federal. We need Mulder and Scully on this fucking case. After being startled by a noise, Ronan goes deeper into this house, which leads, of course, to a creepy basement. But instead of finding Norman Bates, he finds the corpse of Baxter, and just like the new hole in his Chevy Chase, his newly acquired astral form spills the beans.
What are you doing here?
Following a lead. I never dropped the case. Had this psychic, Cassandra, working with me. And we figured out the Bell killer is hunting mediums, like a witch trial execution copycat.
Where's the killer?
No idea. He could be anywhere, but when we fought, he said something I didn't understand at all.
Wait. The killer actually talked?
Not much, but I think I hit a nerve. I told that bastard he'd be dead soon, but he said, I already know death. And then something about his instrument of death will kill again tonight.
My instrument of death? But he kills different ways every time. I don't get it.
Yeah, me neither.
We gotta figure out what that means.
And inside this basement, Ronan finds an old jail cell, with an apparition of a righteous man, pointing down at someone. Oh wait, it's Abigail?
You claim righteousness, but you know your guilt, and cannot deny your punishment is due.
I thought you stood for justice. How is this just?
The courts are not a place for your murderous whimsy. You are a corrupt heathen. The families of those innocent souls you executed through false accusation of witchcraft will exact their righteous justice tonight.
False accusation?
What is that nonsense you draw?
My mark will burn like a brand on the flesh of this town. If it takes me to the ends of eternity, I will personally make the bell toll for every witch in Salem.
Nah, I'm more of a Master of Puppets fan myself. So, yeah, the hot potato of suspects has landed in the lap of a girl you interacted with for about 5 minutes 6 hours ago, which is... Actually, put a pin in that, we'll get to it, because we are interrupted by Baxter's blower.
Has Rex checked in? He's transporting a suspect to the station. We can't get him on the radio. He isn't picking up his phone either.
Nope, he hasn't checked in. We'll notify you when he should.
Copy that.
Oh shit, if Rex is missing, it could be going down right now. Where'd you take Joy, you asshole?
So Ronan uses his superpower of us picking the right answers to work out that the only thing the Bell Killer hasn't done to his victims so far is hang them. So now it's a breakneck jog to the museum to stop Joy from dancing on the end of that rope.
Joy!
Ronan, help!
Not another step.
No, not you, Rex.
This has nothing to do with her, Abigail.
Oh, but it does. For 300 years, we have executed the witches who corrupt our fair city.
Down there. Let's go.
Those who try to mask their demonic contract and leverage powers they should never possess.
Just like you have.
Don't you dare compare me to her!
Easy, easy. Put your hands up!
Help!
Don't do anything stupid.
Hands up! Stop what you're doing. Hands up! Do it now!
Abigail, stop!
Rex, you piece of shit. What are you doing? Not now. This was you.
Didn't want you getting closer to the truth.
Ronan, do something!
Hold tight, kid. I'm on my way.
Oh shit, we got 20 seconds. Quick, do some high velocity detective work. Go, go, go. Oh, phew, shit. And here is where we get the final reveal.
The time is upon us, Abigail Williams.
No.
You scourge of Salem, it is time to pay for your sins!
This can't be happening. You want to use memories against me? Two can play at that game.
I know the truth about your death, but I still don't know the truth about mine. Did you use Rex to kill me?
Rex was my most influential. The most respected, the most feared official in town. Of course I did.
How could Rex have done it? Rose's killer had blue eyes.
I didn't use the same killer for every murder.
Baxter. Why did you kill Baxter?
I eventually kill all the killers I use. Especially the ones who get close to the truth.
I wasn't close to the truth in the apartment. I wasn't one of your killers. Why did I have to die?
Oh, shit. Ronan was the murderer and the sole suspect. Okay. Fine. And with this revelation, Ronan drags Abby to hell, and we get the final monologue.
We all got a dark side, sometimes obvious, sometimes not. If we're lucky, we keep our dark side hidden. By law, Rex was a killer. But the law doesn't always see the truth. Fortunately, Joy did. And she would never press charges. She might even help Rex cover his tracks. One thing's for certain. She's a better person than I was at that age. A kid who deserves forgiveness. She's paid her dues. And committing a few small crimes, searching for your mom, well, even the coldest cops would forgive those.
Mom!
Hasn't been a Bell killer murder since the night Abigail met her final end. But the case never officially closed. But memories fade, time heals. With luck, Salem will move on and find peace. Death repays debts, my father always said. Forever I believe that. But truth be told, this life ain't over until you're honest about what you owe. Set everything right. Settle your debts. Only then can you move on.
Ronan?
Yeah, that was indeed an ending, with the parting shot of the credits showing the publisher before the developer, which is an odd choice. Let's dive into that. Now, I want to get into my thoughts of Murdered, but this credit section here is what sparked a little investigation of my own. But the first clue on how this promising game missed its potential was a month after this title was shit, Airtype Games closed its doors. And while it's unclear as to why this happened, it seemed like they were having financial troubles 6 months before the launch of the game. But then if you extend this scope, the economics of making a game that straddled not one but 2 console generations had to take a chunk out of the budget, because you're trying to make a game for 2 different architectures. And yeah, they may overlap with the game engine itself, but trying to target one will hinder the other, and vice versa. And the second clue, and probably the most damaging, is another trend. With every new bump in tech, those smaller independent studios who would make this B-grade schlock were being pushed out by the increasing cost of making games for these platforms. Which is ironic, as the transition between the PS2, Xbox and GameCube to the burgeoning HD consoles is what caused the Japanese slump in the first place. But in the end, why Murdered and Airtype failed doesn't take away from the game itself, and while it has some glaring issues, I fucking love it. Yeah, sure, the investigation mechanics are kinda shallow and blankly tell you the mystery rather than use your ingenuity to put the pieces together. I do like the little things that you notice early on in these investigations will play a bigger part later on. But saying that, it can be frustrating when you have worked out part of this mystery, while our lead is still pondering over other bits that we already know, like his 100 a day habit underclocks his noggin with all that nicotine. And yes, that final reveal is kind of weak, but I can see what they were trying to achieve. But as it's abundantly clear that this production was a sinking ship that was still bringing in new passengers, it doesn't feel like a complete arsepull, it feels more like a band-aid. And while I may have sounded down on Murdered during the story dump, I'm really not. It has some gold behind this rawness, with some fun writing and funny and endearing performances. And that world, my fuck, that world is so cool. I would love to see more games with this vibe, that doesn't devolve into cheap jump scare laden tripe, just like how the game was marketed before release.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, this clip wasn't from a TV show, this was from the advert. I have no words. And that's the end of this video. Thank you for watching, and if you want to support this fucking mess, you can also find me on Patreon, links below.